I'm a hardcore adrenaline junkie. After having spent 6 years driving a race car in the NHRA Sport Compact Drag Racing Series, I decided to take a break, and I immediately began looking for my next high. That's when I found this video on YouTube of these 5 guys base jumping off the cliffs in Norway. And I thought it was the most incredible thing I had ever seen in my life. I mean, I had skydived before, but this was something different. Base jumping is jumping off of buildings, antennas, bridges, and mountains with a parachute. It's more dangerous than skydiving because there's only 1 parachute versus 2 in skydiving. You're jumping from much lower altitudes, and you can easily hit the object that you've jumped off of. And for all of those reasons, it was an attractive sport to me. And I decided I wanted to try it. So over the course of the next 3 years, I completed 250 skydives and 25 base jumps. And then I found myself atop that very mountain I'd seen in that video in Norway. There I was, 33 years old, surrounded by 50 other base jumpers from all over the world in an international base jumping event. I was wearing my new blue and yellow tracking suit with my matching blue and yellow parachute, because it's important to match. And I knew at that moment I couldn't have been any more prepared than I was. So I picked up my walkie-talkie and I called down to the guys in the landing area and I said, "Give me 10 seconds." And I counted in my head from 10 to 3, and then out loud I said, 3, 2, 1, see ya. And I ran and I just hurled my body off the mountain. And as the wind hit my face, I pulled my arms down to my side and straightened my legs and drove my body away from the mountain. And after 12 seconds, I pulled my pilot chute and wham! My parachute opened perfectly. And everything was beautiful. There I was in the Norwegian fjords with green mountains on either side of me and blue water underneath me. I pulled down my toggles and I steered towards the landing area, flew along the rocks, and then cleared the boulders and landed perfectly. And all the guys, the Norwegians, the French, the Russians, they came up and they high-fived me. And at that moment, I was one of them. So all week long, I continued to jump off the mountains into the fjords, living my dreams. And so by the last day of the event, I was super psyched. I ran to the top of the mountain. I was like the 3rd one up there. I was incredibly excited because at this point, I was invincible. Nothing could go wrong because nothing had gone wrong all week long. So again, I picked up the walkie-talkie and I called down to the guys in the landing area and I said, "Give me 10 seconds." Counted in my head from 10 to 3 and said, 3, 2, 1, see ya. And I ran and I did a backflip somersault off the mountain, planed out into my tracking position, and I was having so much fun, I decided to fall for a few seconds longer. And then I pulled my parachute open perfectly, and I looked around and I realized I'm a lot lower than I had been all week long. So I quickly grabbed my toggle, steered towards the landing area, flew along the rocks, and as soon as I went to turn into the landing area, that's when I realized I'm too low to clear those boulders and that I was going to collide with them. And I did. I slammed foot first into the boulders, tumbled over them, and landed on my back. I woke up in a Norwegian hospital with a surgeon who spoke very little English, but he knew enough to tell me that I had a terrible, terrible break. I had shattered my heel bone into over 30 pieces, and I broke my ankle, and he could not fix me, but I needed to find someone who could. So I spent the next 9 days researching surgeons and hospitals, and then I flew over to the US, and that's where I met Dr. Cooper. Now, Dr. Cooper was a world-renowned foot and ankle surgeon working at the Institute for Foot and Ankle Reconstruction. And Dr. Cooper had the God complex. He thought he was God because he could fix anyone. Well, by the time I got to his hospital, I was in some pretty unbearable pain. I was completely out of pain medication, and I was sitting in his office crying. I wasn't just crying, I was bawling, because that's all I could think to do at the time. So he walks in, and he introduces himself, and I just immediately begin begging for pain medication. And he says, "Just hold on a second." He goes over to the computer, and he pulls up my CT scans. And as the first one comes up, he takes a look at it, and he goes, "Ooh." And then the next one comes up, and he's like, "Ooh." And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know what the big deal is here. You fix feet, I broke my foot, I need you to fix me. I don't know why this has to be so dramatic. It's at that point that he looks over at me with this glimmer in his eye. And you can tell he's excited. He's excited like an intern on Grey's Anatomy when they see a hard case. So he sits down in his stool and he scoots on over to me and he says, I can fix you, but you're never gonna jump on the ground again, you're never gonna run again, and you most certainly are never gonna skydive or base jump again. Now, I had been crying so hard, I hadn't heard much up until this point, but I heard that. And I stopped crying and I said, I don't care if I jump on the ground again, I don't care if I run again, but I will skydive and base jump again. And then I proceeded to tell him all the reasons why I felt I needed to do this. And he continued to tell me all the reasons why I should not and probably would not be able to complete such dangerous activities. So we argued for 15 minutes, and then we agreed to disagree. And he scheduled me for surgery. So I came back a week later. He conducted the surgery. It went as well as could be expected. I left there with 2 plates and 19 screws in my foot and ankle. And he wished me well in a year of recovery. And he was right. I spent 2 to 3 hours a day in physical therapy for over a year. But after 8 months, I started jumping in physical therapy. After 11 months, I started running. And after 13 months, I skydived. And I was so excited to tell Dr. Cooper about my skydive, so I ran back to his office and I had all my pictures and I laid them out and I said, look, I skydived. And for a second there, he was proud. But at the same time, you could tell he was pretty annoyed. Because I had just proven Dr. Cooper wrong, and no one proves Dr. Cooper wrong. So I said, I'm going to continue to skydive, at which point there was no argument. I said, I do have a concern. I know there's a lot of metal in my foot. What happens if I break that foot again? And he looks over at me with this smug look in his eye and all the confidence in the world, and he says, I can fix you. Just do me a favor, break the other foot next time. Don't mess up my work. And I said, I'll do my best. All the while I was just visualizing the next jump in my head, because I'm an adrenaline junkie, and this is just what I do.